Welcome to another unit in this Excel course. This time I'm going to talk about rounding numbers in Excel. Well, this sounds relatively straightforward, and while Excel also automatically does this once you shorten the number down to only 2, 3 decimals, but you can also enforce this, for example, in some calculations, and you have actually a lot of functions available for this. First off, as you can see, if I type in round, I get the normal rounding function, which works in a way we know this. So basically it makes a cutoff at 0.5. Below, he rounds down. From this value upwards, he rounds up. Well, rounding up, rounding down is actually a bit of a problem here. Because, well, for positive numbers, no big deal. But we can round negative numbers as well. And that's actually the problem here. Also, if I talk about the round down and round up function. Well, round down always rounds down, round up always rounds up. Someone would say it's like this. Well, it's not true. Because rounding down in this context means rounding closer to 0. Whereas rounding up means rounding away from 0. Okay, what do I mean by this? Let's consider first the rounding function. Imagine I have a value here of 1.5566. Then you see I don't only have to enter the number, I also have to tell him the number of digits, the number of decimals I want to have. So if I just enter 2, he will round this to 2 decimals. If I want him to round this to integers, I can go with 0. So he will, in this case, round this up because this is larger than 0.5. However, that's the interesting thing, I can also work with -1 here. So here he would round to 0, but if, for example, I were to have like 6 here, he would round up to 10. So he would basically move the point where he rounds 1 ahead, 1 into the, well, integer area, then round this down. So we can interpret the -1 or the 1 here or the 0 as in relation to the decimal point. If there's the 0, then basically he rounds with regards to the decimal point. If there's a 1, 1 away to the right. If there's a -1, 1 away towards the left. So here we see we can round, well, on different decimals, but also to 10th, 100th, 100th, stuff like this. Usually if we talk about rounding, we however mean rounding up and down to the next integer. So here I would round up to 7 because, as I said, the decimal is larger than 0.5. Okay, then if I take a look at the round up function, here we see he also rounds up to 7, but he also rounds up to 7 if I have 6.05. So as soon as I'm here larger than the 6, he will always round to the next number. Correspondingly, round down, doesn't matter if I have here 6.0 something or 6.9. In this case, he will round down. Well, this works decently enough, as I said, if I have positive numbers. What if I have a negative number? So if I take -6.9566. So if I round down, you see I actually get -6. So here, yeah, we could imagine this is also rounding down. But in other words, it's moving the value closer to 0. Because if you go with the definition of rounding down, you would say I always take the smaller number. Well, the smaller number would be -7. So rounding down in Excel is not defined as going to the next smallest number, but going to the next number closer to 0. Therefore, rounding up, in this case, will give me -7. Here, I'm moving away from the 0. So not to the next largest number, but to the next one farthest away from 0. Okay, but what if I actually want to have the next largest or the next smallest number, independent of whether this is positive or negative? Well, this is also possible. For this, we just have to recall how we would use rounding functions in different programming languages. There we would have, for rounding up, so-called ceiling functions, or ceil. And here we have ceiling as well, ceiling dot math, so it's a math function. So we can start with the positive value. Okay, why is this 0? Okay. Only insert a number here in the standard version. So he will round to the next largest number. Here in a positive makes sense. He's rounding up. With negative values, he also rounds to the next largest number, which here is -6. So in the positive, he rounds away from 0. For the negative, he rounds towards 0. So ceiling is the next highest number. Well, the opposite to ceiling is floor. So we have also a function floor math, which again, in the positive numbers, rounding down to the next smallest number, so closer to 0. But in the negative ones, he also goes to the next smallest number. So here he is rounding away from 0. So rounding is not as straightforward as someone might think, especially if we also have to work with negative numbers. So here we can differentiate between the round, which works in the fashion we know this, or specific round up, round down, which is always rounding away or rounding towards 0, and the floor and math, which is rounding to the next smallest or the next largest number. Well, that's already everything I wanted to include in this session. So I hope you enjoyed listening to it. And if you want to see additional insights in Excel, feel free to visit the rest of the course or have a look at the corresponding playlist. I say goodbye and see you next time.